All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ come upon you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Good evening and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts.
I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa, and I am so glad I remembered what the intro was because I didn't do it last week because I was not here, and Daniel very courageously held the fort down without me.
Yeah, courageously is a good word to describe. Talking about Wicker Man for an hour.
That's what I was getting at.
The 2006 Wicker Man.
Yeah. Let's not associate that with the classic 1970s film with one of the greatest actors of all time, Christopher Lee,
absolutely. Who we discussed on the episode. If you didn't listen to our episode, the original idea for the remake was going to have Christopher Lee in it, and then it just sat on the shelf for so long. He eventually went on and did other stuff, and we ended up with what we got,
Count Dooku.
Yeah.
So decisions were made. Count Dooku is one of the better things about the Star Wars prequel trilogy. So, I enjoy him. And there's things to enjoy about that too. And then there's Wicker Man. But that's not what we're talking about today. Because if you're watching live, we are 2 days away from St. Patty's Day.
Yes.
And if you're listening at some point, not live, probably
you might still be recovering from St. Patty's Day.
You might be balls deep in green beer and still wondering what the hell happened to the last 72 hours. And that's about what St. Patty's Day was like for me in my 20s. And although I can't say I miss it.
I'm the same way with it, right? Like every year it rolls. Like this year it's a Saturday, right? And it's like, man, or a Friday. Excuse me. So it's Friday. It really seems. But this year my excuse is like, I can't drink a gallon of green beer. I've got opening day for baseball the next morning. But
there you go.
Really, the almost 40-year-old in me is like, good, yes, have an excuse to not to not drink a fifth of Jameson. And wash it down with green Bud Light. So, but we do have St. Patty's Day coming up, and we've got a good one.
We do. I mean, maybe the best St. Patrick's Day, let me not say best, but definitely the most St. Patrick's Day themed horror movie. Maybe the best too. I don't know. I don't want to count my chicks before they hatch, or count my bangers and mash before I eat them. I don't know, something like that.
We tried. This was so we're doing Leprechaun this week, and this is the one last year. This is the one that everybody just kind of assumed we were going to do, and we kind of went out of our way to not do Leprechaun last year because we were like, all right, let's subvert expectations a little bit here, and so that's when we did the Hollow.
And you can still find that on our on everything the Shiver, horror movie podcast. It's there.
And but this year we're doing the damn thing, and we're watching Leprechaun, and we watched Leprechaun, and we're gonna talk about it. And I mean, we watched it, right? We watched it.
So I mean, it's interesting because we went with the Hollow last year, and the Hollow is a straight up horror movie.
Right.
It is rather scary. And there's lots of really great Irish folklore in it and mythology and all of that. And this movie kind of does something totally different. It takes like an American view on Irish leprechaun mythology. Right. And it also doesn't take itself too seriously. This is definitely it falls in the camp of comedy horror. or horror comedy, whichever one you want to put first. I feel like it is appropriate. So, my question to you, Daniel, is: does Leprechaun charm us, right, or does it leave us with some sort of disillusion?
So we talked a little bit before we got started about this. This is the first time I have gone back and watched the original Leprechaun since easily the late 90s. I remember this being one that when I was like 15, 16, it was one that everybody knew about, and I was it was one of those ones that it was a blockbuster find, right? And this was a movie that just kind of it was cool back then. When it was still in the zeitgeist. And I remember there was one time on Wayne's World skit on Saturday Night Live, they talked about Leprechaun, right? I mean, it was everywhere. So going back and watching it now, and you does it charm? Man, I don't know. Like it definitely feels like a product of its time. It definitely feels like a movie that was never, let me not say was never taken seriously, because they did some gruesome stuff in here. It definitely just kind of staked its claim in the slasher genre. They knew they wanted to do something different. They knew they wanted to create an iconic character. They followed that idea of going out and finding the new hot thing and Jennifer Aniston, and kind of built a cast around her. Like the kid from Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, all that stuff. I wasn't disappointed in it yesterday. That would be the wrong word. I wasn't scared though, right. So it was fun to go back and watch it. It really was. It definitely has its moments. I mean, you're always kind of laughing at the Leprechaun from the moment he first shows up. And he's one of those characters that is sold by how well he's performed and the commitment that you get out of it. I definitely wouldn't say disillusioned, but yeah, there is a charm to going back and watching this. Also being able to look back and see everything that this franchise became. I mean, we eventually got Leprechaun in the Hood, Leprechaun Back to the Hood. I mean, these are movies that exist, right? And so there was something there. There was absolutely something there. And to go back and watch kind of where it started back when the movie did take itself seriously in trying to be a slasher was a fun little trip down memory lane. I do remember being kind of scared by it when I was 13, 14, watching this thing for the first time. I never really found myself scared. This isn't a tense movie, but it's got some fun moments, and I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to enjoy it when I went back and watched it.
Your sentiments mimic my own. Leprechaun was the kind of series that was ever present in the 90s. You'd walk into a Blockbuster and whatever the newest one was, and they were typically like direct to video. Right. The poster was plastered all over that like horror corner. And so it was something that was always on my mind. In the same way that because it arrived later on the scene than Halloween and Friday the 13th did, like A Nightmare on Elm Street. I remember seeing those posters everywhere,
right?
And I don't remember that first Nightmare on Elm Street poster because it's a little bit before I was born, but I do remember seeing the later Nightmare on Elm Street posters. I remember seeing that Silence of the Lambs poster. That was one that made a big impression on me.
Oh yeah.
And so like I remember seeing Leprechaun everywhere when they came out, and he was scary. The posters were scary. Like the Leprechaun himself is, I think, an iconic horror killer. whether or not he's a good horror killer is kind of irrelevant, because if you can like stake your claim on in the horror verse, like that's really all that matters. How many times have we heard this thing is a classic, and then you go back and you watch and you're like, well, it might be a classic piece of shit, but it's still a classic.
But it's still a classic.
And I don't think that this is that. I don't think that this is garbage. Let me just say that. All right. But this is the schlocky kind of garbage that you can rewatch when you're, maybe 2 or 3 pints of Guinness in. And and you turn to your friend and in the worst Irish accent you can possibly imagine say, well, what are we going to do now, laddie? Right. and then you're like, well, we haven't fucking watched Leprechaun this year. And it's St. Paddy's Day. Right. So, either the Red Sox are playing and they're not, or we're going to watch fucking Leprechaun.
There we go.
And I think that that's exactly what this movie is. This is the kind of movie that you can rewatch time and time again, and it's never going to get better.
Yeah.
But it's also never going to be less than what you need it to be.
That is an excellent point. This is another one of the best reasons for movies like Leprechaun to exist is this is such a great movie to put on when you're having some sort of party and you want a scary movie on, but you just want something on the TV. People aren't actually sitting around watching it. People are sitting around talking, drinking, just enjoying themselves. But it's easy to have up there because let's face it, you turn this movie on at the beginning, you turn it on halfway through, you turn it on in the final
doesn't
act.
Matter.
You've got all the info you need. That's a leprechaun. He wants his gold and he'll kill people to get it. Like there's what, 7 of these things? And all of them, that's you get it. Like, and it's good. By the way, when I was mentioned, yes, he went to the hood and back to the hood, but he's been to space too.
Yeah.
I had forgotten there was a leprechaun in space.
And I'm pretty sure he went to space before Jason did.
I think so. Like let's see. Yes, he went to space in 97. So yeah, that predates Jason X.
Yeah.
And so this is that great movie where if you got a bunch of friends over and you want something on that you don't have to pay any attention to, that you can laugh at when you do look up or occasionally cringe just because something kind of gory happens. This is a really good movie for that. And there's value in that.
Yeah.
There really is. That's one of the greatest things about the horror genre is that you can find value in a movie that is great background noise, that just plays well when you're not paying that much attention. And this movie definitely falls into that category.
Yeah, it does.
So, and as we're talking about the idea that you don't really have to pay that much attention to get a feel for this movie in a category we're calling Wicked Good Fun. Little Warwick Davis pun for everybody there. I mean, this is a movie, right, that's got a leprechaun, a pot of gold, and a group of people in North Dakota just trying to hang on. Right? That's what we've got.
That's it.
They're just trying to survive. So, but we get some laughs, we get some gore. I mean, does it work as a horror? Does it work as a comedy? Does it? I mean, which one do you feel like it works more of when you look at the story?
Listen, when it comes to story, my 10-month-old babbled a couple syllables to me earlier today.
Yes,
that are about as cogent as the story was.
Okay, fair.
He's real cute, but don't make an awful lot of sense. This movie is kind of that. It's real cute, but it doesn't make an awful lot of sense. And it doesn't have to, because it's a movie that doesn't take itself very seriously. We talked about this when we do any of these kinds of movies. It just needs to make enough sense to get you from point A to point B. And if there's a point C, even better. Right. As far as you can make your way down the alphabet with, these ridiculous premises. Great. And that's kind of what this movie is. It doesn't make an awful lot of sense. Why does the leprechaun have any of the powers that it has? Truthfully, some of this does go back to, Gaelic mythology.
Yes.
It does. The whole mimicking the voices, going back to like changelings and things like that. Yeah. And that's real cool. But being able to reattach body parts and stuff like that. Listen, I'm not questioning any of it because the movie is basically one giant gag. It's one gag to the next. And honestly, it works for me. If you think about it, is it any good? No. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with this movie not really being a good movie. The kills are decent.
Yeah.
They're not great. They're good enough. When I learned what the budget of this movie was, I was actually in shock that they were able to really do any of the stuff that they did.
They made it for $1 million.
$1 million flat. This was Trimark's first movie, and $1 million was basically everything they had.
Yeah.
And they made the movie for $1 million. And when you look at it, and this is 1993. So, there's been quite a bit of inflation since then, but we're not talking about like, this is the 1970s. This is the 1960s. Like we're really only talking about like a 30-year period here, right? In fact, exactly a 30-year period.
Right.
$1 million was not a lot of money to make anything for back then. Like I think Clerks was made for more than $1 million. And Clerks was made right around this time, and he had to go to black and white film stock to be able to do
exactly.
That.
He was making boom mics with hockey sticks.
Right. So, the fact that they did anything with $1 million, much less made a movie where I was like, oh, that was a cool kill. Did it look good? No. Does that look like an eyeball? No. Will I accept it?
Eyeball.
Fuck yeah, I will. That's kind of what the story felt like to me. And it is just enough story to make the ridiculous premise work. And for that, I kind of have to give it to Mark Jones for putting together something that works? ?
Yeah, there's hold on. We got Seth Key chiming in here, friend of the show. I have become Leprechaun to this world. Yeah, right. I mean, and that is the thing about this movie. It's when you go back and you watch it, you do get a lot of quotable moments out of the Leprechaun. You do get a lot of memorable stuff. It is just enough story. You're right. It just kind of holds it together, and you're right. I'm okay with that. It's funny. There's a moment in this movie where Jennifer Aniston plays a girl who's gone to spend the summer with her dad, and she's from LA and is used to just spending money on whatever she wants, right? Everything's just all about money. And so then we get a very Hallmark movie moment where she bumps into Nathan carrying the paint thinner and she tries to just pay him for it. And he doesn't understand what she's doing.
And he's very small town. He's like, well, you can start with, I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I said, very, very Hallmark.
Yeah.
And there's this great moment where she goes, and he's like, oh, you girls are always afraid of spiders. And she goes, excuse me, this is the 90s.
Did you, I'm sorry, did you leave your 1950s calendar here?
Yeah. And it's just stuff like that. Just some of that really funny stuff. And then just the idea that the entire premise of Jennifer Aniston being stuck in any of this is just because she wants to prove to this guy that she's not some typical girl who's afraid of spiders. That cracks me up. That is really funny to me. It's also really funny to draw the parallels in her character at the beginning of this movie to her Rachel character when Friends first started, right? Because it was the same type of thing.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. Just as you get through this movie, it's just like, all right, give me a reason to go to the hospital. Okay, All right, yeah, give me a reason to be down in the basement. Yep. Oh, okay. 4-leaf clover came off the crate. Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And you're always just barely hanging on by a thread, but they maintain that thread so well.
Right.
You're never at any point sitting in this movie going, wait, why is this happening? Mm-hmm. Because they never tried to make it super deep. The connective tissue here is strong. Mm-hmm. They give you a through line from the very beginning where he's counting his gold to the very end when his face is just melted in the well, right?
Yeah.
They teach you very early on without spoon feeding you the idea that they're opposed to 4-leaf clovers.
Mm-hmm.
They show you early on that bullets aren't going to get it done. I mean, they established what their mythos was from the jump. And then they stuck to it. And we always say, if you want us to buy into these movies, you make rules and you follow them. We don't care what the rules are as long as you don't break them. And they did that. They set us up at the beginning. He has magic. He doesn't like 4-leaf clovers. He's immortal, kind of, right? And
immortal enough.
Immortal enough that he can spend 10 years in a crate. And he
is hungry when he gets out.
He is hungry when he gets out.
They do address that.
And so, then they do some funny stuff with it. I love the moment when after he scratches her leg and then he makes the cat noise and they're like, oh, it must be a cat. I'm like, what sort of cat can maul your leg like that and then meow? Like this is some sort of jaguar scratch, and that's not what they sound like.
My favorite thing about that was that that Nathan is like, oh, you were gonna let me?
Yeah, exactly.
Like with the caressing of the leg.
Yeah,
like she's overplayed her hand.
Yeah, oh, so I can't caress your leg. Check. And so they did. I do like that they kind of stretched and played with what his magic did without ever, fully establishing that. The point when the coin collector opens his safe and the leprechaun's in there, it's like, okay, so this dude can teleport, I guess. Cool, whatever, stick with it, right? Like I'm good with that. But I do like that most of his kills were hands-on stuff. This is a guy who just clawed people. He bit people. He,
pogo sticked people.
Yeah, pogo stick people, right? Chased an old woman down the stairs.
Yeah.
Just whatever it takes. And that was, I liked that because they did also show us early on that without his gold, he didn't have much of his magic. So it made sense that, he just had these gruesome fingers and these disgusting teeth, and he might as well use them for weapons. And you also talked about the idea of some of this stuff actually coming from Gaelic lore. And I adore the idea of the fact that he's always shining the shoes, right? Because that goes
They established that right away. He's a cobbler.
Yeah, and that goes back as far as the idea of the leprechaun goes, is that leprechauns are shoemakers, and if you want to confuse one, if you just throw a bunch of shoes around the place, they have to shine them. Yeah. And because a lot like when we did Changeling last year, and you get into how bizarre some of this lore is at its beginnings versus some of the homogenized versions we get now. Now I teach pre-K. We do How to Catch a Leprechaun, before St. Patrick's Day every year, and you always promote them as like these cute little guys, and if you catch them, you get a wish or you get their gold or whatever, and it's all fun and games because that's what it's boiled down to now. We've reduced it to that, but when you go to the origins of the leprechaun myth, they're horrifying.
It's gruesome. Yeah.
It is absolutely terrifying. And so I always love when somebody goes back to the deep roots of something that has just become a pop culture joke and shows us that these were originally told as bedtime stories that were to scare kids. You told kids stories of leprechauns so they didn't get out and wander in the fields at night. They were home when it was dark. They go back to that idea of telling these scary stories because if you put the fear of something in a child, they would listen to you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which is so often the basis of so many of these myths and stories that we tell now. You dig deep enough and you go, oh, this was a cautionary tale. This was told because it wasn't a good idea to be wandering the countryside in the dark. And I do love that they went back and did that with this movie and established all of that in the story. So that is one place where I give them a lot of credit.
Yeah. I don't think there's much more.
There's really
you could really
not.
go
Look,
into. I mean,
yeah,
the story is what it is.
we're not exactly breaking down parables here.
No.
When it comes to the story behind Leprechaun, like I said at the top, he's got his gold, loses his gold, wants to
get it back. That's all there is. You know, when it comes to a story that's this simple, it really kind of boils down to your cast. Really selling this story. So in a section that we're going to call Friends of the Leprechaun, insert Rembrandts here. We are going to talk about some of the actors here, right?
Yeah.
This actually is kind of filled with actors that we know.
Yeah.
For such a small budget movie, these are actors that we're all fairly familiar with, right? So does anyone stand out to you as kind of like a really great performance, or a really bad performance, or just like a really mediocre performance?
So Mark Holton is the guy.
I'm so glad we're talking about him.
He plays Ozzy, and it's actually a really, really good performance, which is there's a lot to be said throughout the history of film and stage productions as well. Like you're looking at Mice and Men, right? Of the idea of playing a mentally deficient character.
Right.
And he did a great job of playing this in a realistic way without insert phrase from Tropic Thunder here that I'm not going to say.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Right? Like, and he did an excellent job of portraying this grown man who's a big dude, but had a childlike mentality about everything. And it was not only, he portrayed it very well, but it was written very well in a way that was never disrespectful.
Right.
And that's a like I said, I mean, it's such a trope that's why they made fun of it in Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
And he did a really good job about that, down to the fact that you get that really touching moment where what's the
Alex.
The kid from Alex? Don't Tell Mom Babysitter's Dead.
Alex.
Yeah. When he's sitting, when he's sitting there with Alex and he's talking, and Alex is like, yeah, man, if I get all this gold, I'm going to get that surgery to fix your brain. Right. So you'll be smart, because because this is this is his guy, and he's looking out for him. And he wasn't saying it in some sort of disrespectful way. He just wanted him to live a better life. And you get that really touching moment where he's kind of understanding what Alex is getting at. And it's occurring to him in that moment where you can tell this is maybe the first time where him and Alex have had this conversation about his intelligence and kind of where he ranks on all of this. And it was just, it is an amazing performance in a movie that didn't warrant a performance like that. And that's really cool. When you can have, directorial decisions and actor decisions that handled that perfectly. And this is a guy who was Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Francis, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's Francis from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. This is a guy who didn't go on to do much. I think he was in Teen Wolf too.
Yeah. Both of them.
Yeah. And so I was actually pleasantly surprised with the performance that I'm sure that when I saw this when I was 13 was just laughable.
Right.
And I didn't get anything out of it. But now watching it, I was really kind of impressed with how well everything about that role of Ozzy was handled. And you get, like I said, you get the stuff at the beginning where it's like, okay, he's the goofball in their group. And then it kind of goes and it's like, no, he's not just a goofball. And, he swallows the damn coin and just all of that stuff. But then at the end, his childlike mentality saves the day.
Yeah.
When you've got to believe, and to find the 4-leaf clover and all of that. It was a role that was handled extremely well when in a movie and a genre that, let's be honest with ourselves, does not always handle these things well.
Yeah.
This is a role that is just ready to make this movie cringeworthy.
Yeah, unwatchable, really.
And unwatchable. And they handled it very, very well. When I fired up this movie, I remembered the role of Ozzy, but I did not expect to be blown away the way that I was by the way that the whole thing was handled. And so I was super impressed with that one.
There's, I'm glad you're mentioning him because he's an actor that I've loved for a long time because Pee-wee's Big Adventure is a huge part of my childhood.
So good, man.
And he is
is that horror enough? Can we do Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
I mean, if Large Marge isn't
scared the shit out of me
a monster, I don't know what is. Right. So I saw this movie twice this week. I saw it yesterday on my own, and I saw it today with my son because it had been a long time since I'd seen it, and I didn't want to put it on without having seen it, again, and for him, and he loves to watch these things with me, and I was like, oh, this is as juvenile as it gets with horror. This is a great starting point for horror. For those of you that are thinking about, what can I introduce my child to horror? Like, this is a perfect one. Silver Bullet that we did last summer. That's another great one. But this has a lot of that, childlike wonderment and innocence in there, and a lot of that is in Ozzy's character. And I think that this is, it's such a great teachable moment here because it's very easy to either exclude these kind of characters because you're afraid of how they're going to be handled,
right?
Or you handled them with like total seriousness, and that's not what happened here. He is very funny.
Yes.
And he is included in many of the gags here, but he's never the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
And that's handled very deftly, I think. It's and it's a difficult balancing act because you don't want to point, jokes at a disability.
Right.
But this is still like a human character that can be included in the story. And if the story is a comedic story, like, he's going to get involved in the shenanigans that's going on, so something like the paint gag with the ladder at the beginning of the movie. It's possible that you can look at that as, okay, well, Alex is pointing fun at the guy with a learning disability. And I don't think that's what this is, because Alex has nothing but love for him.
Right.
And that's shown throughout the entire movie. I think that Alex would have done that no matter who it was, because Alex is a kid who has to take on kind of that, responsible adult-like role because of who Ozzy is. And the relationship between them is beautiful. The relationship between him and Nathan, even though it's never truly harped on, like, it's kind of great. Like, you think Nathan is a guy who owns his own business.
Yeah.
Who has to take care of his younger brother for whatever reason. We don't know what the living situation is for them, but for whatever reason, he brings Alex with him on these jobs, and he has given Ozzy a job.
Yeah.
And not because it's charity, but because he enjoys Ozzy, and because Ozzy's a good employee. Ozzy's dependable, and if they would have listened to Ozzy from the very beginning, and this is one of the things that upon my second rewatch, because I had, just like you, I hadn't seen this since the Blockbuster days. So, this might as well have been a virgin watch for me. If they had just listened to Ozzy from the very beginning, like you can just insert Curb Your Enthusiasm, credits here.
Yeah.
Because like the movie's fucking over because Ozzy's the only person who took this seriously.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you mentioned him because Holton is a great actor. And the moment that my son saw that he was in this movie, because he's a huge Pee-wee fan, the moment he saw he was in this movie, he says, "I want to watch this one with you." And when I said, okay, he was like, "Does he die in this one?" Like he was very concerned,
right?
That he didn't want to see him die, and he plays a bad guy in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yes,
but that's the kind of personality that that Mark Holton has. Like he just immediately endears himself to you.
Yeah.
The other person that I'm going to mention here, and I mean, she doesn't have top billing, but she does have second billing. Jennifer Aniston, her comedic timing is absolutely perfect, and this is something that can occasionally get lost in Friends, because Friends, I think that the writing is up and down.
Right.
Some episodes are like very funny, really, really funny, and then some episodes are really not. And there's also really great actors on that, like what's this guy, Chandler? Matthew Perry is one of the funniest guys I think that has ever been on television. Courtney Cox is an incredibly funny person. Matt LeBlanc is, I mean, like the entire cast is stellar, right? So it's very easy to get lost in like these like brilliantly funny actors. Her comedic timing in this, like this is not a brilliantly written movie. We've kind of like established that this is an adequately written movie. She manages to make every line count. And it's not because she's like so gorgeous that like I laugh at everything she says, right? Because she's not in front of me.
Right.
There's no point that like
there's got nothing to prove.
Right. It's not to my benefit to laugh at her, right? Or laugh with her. But she manages to make herself someone who you can laugh at and laugh with in this movie.
Yes.
And that's a really difficult thing to do. Like she is, I think, one of the funniest actresses of the last 20 or 30 years. And I think that you don't have to go to Friends to see that. It's a better example if you come here.
Yeah.
Because the material is not as good. It's a lot easier to be funny when your script is funny.
Right.
You can read the script to the birdcage and say, okay, well, I mean, fucking Denzel Washington could have acted in this and it would have been funny. And he's not a funny actor. He does serious, he does action. That's what Denzel Washington does. And he's great at that. But he's not funny.
Right.
And so if I'm reading the script and I'm like, Denzel Washington could have made this funny, that's a funny script. Anyone can make it funny. Who can make this funny? I don't know, but I do know that Jennifer Aniston can. That's the sort of acting chops that she's got, the comedy chops that she's got, and gorgeous to boot. Because who the fuck can pull off those shorts? I don't know.
Those shorts, man. Oh my God, those shorts. It's always so funny. It's always so funny. Like it's one thing. So, when we did sleepaway camp, and you go back and all the guys are wearing the booty shorts and the midriff shirts and stuff like that, which just, I always try to find anytime I ever see like a Facebook comment from people who are like, back in my day, men were men. I'm like, was this your day? And I always post the picture of the guy pitching in sleepaway camp.
Because I'm pretty sure David Coverdale and Tony Katane looked exactly the same in that video.
And exactly. But yeah, like the fashion that's in these things, it always cracks me up, man. When she starts coming down the stairs and I was like, those are some shorts. And then I saw more of them. I was like, whoa, those are some shorts.
Yeah, they are. Those are loud shorts.
And Jennifer Aniston is always an interesting case to me because one, I find her far more attractive now than back then. She aged very well. However, this is one that you can crucify me for if you want. Jennifer Aniston is what I refer to as a classical music chick, and I'll explain. So I am not a big fan of classical music, but I would be a fool to claim that it's not good music. It's just not something I choose. It's not something I listen to.
Okay.
Jennifer Aniston is one of those girls for me. Like whenever anybody's talking about how pretty she is, I'm like, I get it. It's just she doesn't do it for me. Like, and I can never place exactly why, because she's a great actress. You're talking about comedic timing, and this one is partially because of the rest of the cast and the writing, but the breakup, man.
Oh yeah, that's a great
my
one.
God, just so funny in that.
We're the Millers.
Yeah, We're the Millers, another one. But I do think that she is a very good actress, and I do think that it did take a lot to be funny in this, in a way that was not just laughing at the movie, but in the funniness that they wanted us to take from it. And so I did enjoy her. But then, I mean, yeah, once you get away from those two, right, you're like, all right, well, then you've also got Alex. And Alex did a great job, because like you said, it's never really 100% established exactly what him and Nathan's, do they have parents? Is Nathan raising him? Like we're never 100% sure on that. We just know that three guys that paint is Nathan, Alex, and Ozzy. And they get the job done, even if it's painting a house bright blue and giving it Crayola red shutters.
Yeah, what's going on there? It's painted like Captain America in the 70s.
It is like that is the way a kindergartner colors a house in a picture, because they've only got 8 crayons, right? It's and it's like, and they just want it bold. And sure, I mean, whatever, but they were taking the job seriously, Right. So, and Alex was another one who, that moment with Ozzy, the painting moment that you were talking about, but he was also he was tough, which also leads you to wonder if that story is kind of him and Nathan against the world, because it's obvious that he's not just tagging along and annoying his brother on these jobs.
He's working.
Because he's working. Yeah, he's out there working. And he's, he's obviously got some street smarts to him. He knew where the coin dealer was, hit him with the, can we just keep this between us? Like he's a kid who's at least read a couple of comics and has seen a couple of movies, and
he's wise beyond his years.
Yeah, he's definitely more mature than he should be, and he gets the kill shot, man. So good for Alex, right?
Absolutely. And what a great line at the line before the kill.
Yes.
Fuck you, Lucky Charms.
Yes.
And Lincoln paused the movie, and he turned to me and he said, he said it. He goes, "Did he just say fuck you, Lucky Charms?" And I said, "Yeah, kid, he did." And he was like, "That's so cool." I'm like, yeah, that really is so cool.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. It was Mark Jones is his name, right? Like he knew he had struck gold with that one, right?
Look at that one.
Yeah, because that is a top tier about to kill the killer line right there. Like that one is solid. And he delivered it perfectly. It's
that's up there with Commando. Blow off some steam.
Yeah. Or just Arnold Schwarzenegger ones. This one's not even a good one, but honest to God, I think it made me laugh harder than anyone else. In Eraser, when he kicks the dead alligator at the guy and goes, "Your luggage." That one just but
it is my goal to mention Schwarzenegger in every single one of our episodes until we do End of Days.
Until we get to End of Days.
And then never mention him again.
But it really is amazing how in a movie where when we came off the top and said, it's not good and the story's just barely there, but these characters that we got played their roles so well that I was invested in them making it through. that was one thing that Hunger and I talked about last week on Wicker Man. It's like, yeah, I don't give a shit if this dude dies. I know he's going to, but I don't care. I don't care if he, I barely care that he's just out there decking all these 2-dimensional women that live on this island because they suck. Just like
not one of them measures up to Britt Eklund.
What?
Not one of them measures up to Britt Eklund.
No. And so, but what we got out of the characters in this, and yeah, the dad's there, Nathan's there, they're fine. But those 3 characters, I really was invested in them making it through and them surviving and figuring out how to solve this leprechaun problem. And that's, especially in a slasher movie, there's a lot to that, because when you watch a movie like this and you just kind of expect everyone's going to die, if you actually create characters that I care about and that I'm emotionally invested in, if and when they die, that's super impressive.
Right. Yeah.
So in a category here that we're just going to call hilariously scary, we are not unfamiliar with the horror comedy. We do them and we usually enjoy them, and we've always got to take some time to talk about the balance there, because we've talked about how good the kills are. We've talked about how good the performances are. I mean, when we look at both of those things, so we've got kills, we've got gags. I mean, which ones in particular kept you going, either because you were laughing or because you were kind of grossed out? Like, why were you still sticking around by the end of this movie?
I'll tell you, as far as kills go, my favorite, I wouldn't even call it a kill because it's just like a gag, really. When the leprechaun takes the eyeball and uses it as his new eyeball.
Eye for an eye, me laddie.
It's the perfect melding of humor and gore, because like he's already killed this guy, right? And it's crazy. Like he just kind of like scratched at his face, and now I guess he's dead, right? Which is like the same thing he did to Tori's leg earlier in the movie, and yet this totally massacres the deputy. But only, I mean, all that Tori needed was like some Neosporin, and Neosporin was not going to help this guy out.
No.
So he takes this old eyeball and shoves it into his face, and it works.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not even a good looking eyeball. Like that is like the hardest looking eyeball I've ever seen. It could very well have been a marble that was painted.
I believe it.
I believe it probably was. Yeah. Like there was no squishiness to this. This is not like a Giallo movie where it's like, oh, is that really an eyeball? Did you get that from like a local hospital or something? This is not that. The blood is not very realistic looking, but fuck, it works. Like it's effective, and the weird like predator blood that he bleeds.
Yeah.
That I will say that effect at the end when he swallows the clover where he starts to like disintegrate, that's a pretty, gnarly looking effect.
Yeah. That had to be a solid chunk of their budget, because they did a great job with that.
I would believe that it was half of it if you told me that it was, because it is really, really good. It's a really good effect, and the special effects artist on this is Moss just kind of flew in here.
I saw that.
Yeah, weird. And he's gone, just like that. Welcome to Shiver, a Moth podcast. The special effects artist went on to work on like Blade. Ooh, Mothman. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wanted to work on Blade, like this is a legit guy. So you see kind of like hints of the special effects artist that he would become. There's some good stuff here. And I think it is just good enough to when you've had a couple of those green Budweisers. They work.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I do. I love anytime a character is shot or stabbed or it's just something happens to them. And then it's obvious that it's just like a dummy that they like flip for the special effect. And when he takes those shotgun blasts and it's obvious that it's just like a mannequin that they dressed up by and like somebody grabbed it by the foot and flipped it. I love that shit. Right. Like that's the type of stuff that just warms your heart as a horror fan. It's like, yeah, good on you. Okay. That was a fun one. The actual kills. Yeah, dude, the pogo stick that's
it's so good.
That's so funny and
unique.
And unique. Yeah. And I mean, I have seen pogo sticks without the rubber stopper on the bottom take chunks out of concrete.
Yeah.
And so if you've ever been on a pogo stick, you know that there's, when those things will go. And so, but that was one where that was a perfect melding of horror and of comedy. Cause it's just funny, but also probably just a gruesomely painful way to die.
Yeah.
And so that one I really enjoyed. My favorite thing though about this is the constant idea that he always has a smaller version of what everyone else has. The Leprechaun always has a smaller version of what everyone else has. So they get in the truck to go to town, to go to the hospital. He gets on a tricycle.
Oh man.
They get in the truck to try to run away from him. He's in a go-kart.
Yeah, where the fuck did that thing come from?
Yeah.
And it knocks over the truck.
Yes, you're telling me that the guy who owned it, because all the stuff in the house is just the dudes who lived there 10 years ago stuff, right? What was it, Mr. O'Grady?
O'Grady.
Yeah, just like super Irish name. But yeah, you're telling me this guy owned a go-kart? Like, why is the go-kart there? But it's just like the commitment to that gag of him always having a smaller version of whatever they have. That's funny. It was like Joker always having like something that's like neon green and purple.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like his Joker mobile, it's gonna be that color.
Yes, it's just and yet like that I loved. I thought that was so great. The way that he would just like. The way that the ringing bell went from being something just goofy and fun that he did when he jumped on the tricycle to becoming something that was a sound that made them
sinister.
Afraid.
Yeah,
there we go. Those little things like that are the moments that elevate a movie to where it is a good blending of horror and comedy instead of it being these two distinct things that at one point the movie just becomes one then the other. For as much as we loved Idle Hands very much was a comedy that eventually just became a horror movie.
Right.
This was a movie that from the jump it did both. At the very beginning, and again, a gruesome funny thing when he's puppeting O'Grady's wife.
Yeah.
And using her voice and just kind of barely moving her around.
It's sadistic.
It is. And it really shows you how dark the Leprechaun is. But also, if you can't laugh at that moment, just go ahead and shut it off because you're not going to enjoy anything else that happens in this movie. If you can't take a little bit of fear and a little bit of pleasure in that moment, there's nothing. Look, I'll tell you right now, there's nothing left for you in the rest of this movie, right? Because that was the moment that really set the stage for what this was going to be. Mm-hmm. But you want to talk about scary elements, the luring people with children's songs. Again, going back to those origins of what the Leprechaun is.
That is truly creepy, I think.
That is a terrifying moment. Anytime you can take something that's associated with anytime you can take a children's song and make it something that shakes you to your core, like we all know that Nightmare on Elm Street eventually just leaned too far into the joke, but also everybody remembers the first time they heard that jump rope rhyme.
Yeah.
And it just stuck with you and it shook you. That's what happens every time he's singing those children's songs and luring someone in. You're scared. And you know it's him, but you also know that they're going to follow and they're going to try to figure out what it is. Everything they did with the back and forth of the comedy and the horror in this was spectacular. And it needed that. It needed to be that. It needed a blend of certain things being taken very seriously and other things just you got to laugh and you got to enjoy it.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that it is on the level of quality as Return of the Living Dead, but
Right.
its ability to mesh comedy and horror together seamlessly does rival Return of the Living Dead. Because I mean, Return of the Living Dead's on a whole nother level. Like that is a perfect movie.
It really is.
Yeah, and we got to do it again. I mean, it's gonna get a gold star, but regardless, I could talk about that movie, every episode from here to the end of Shiver. But to make me think that this rivals its meshing of comedy and horror, like that's nothing to shake a stick at.
Right.
That's a great quality to have in a big way. And talking about a big way, we've got the Wee Folk, which is our penultimate category here as we talk about the one cast member that we purposely neglected to speak about in our Friends of the Leprechaun segment. And we're talking Warwick Davis as the titular character here as the Leprechaun. So when you compare him to some of the other horror killers, particularly slasher killers in the pantheon of horror villains, so we're talking your Holy Trinity, your Michael, Jason, Freddy's, but we're also talking Chucky's, right?
Right.
We're talking Ghostface. He's been in more movies than just about any other horror killer has, except for that Trinity, right? So what do you feel about him? How does he stack up? What is he on his own? And does he work for you first and foremost?
Right. So off the jump, look, Warwick Davis don't miss, man. No. This is a dude who takes every role that he's given and makes it iconic. We were talking on air. It's like, what was you were like, what was his Ewok name? And I was like, the only one I know is Wicket. So I guess it's him.
Yeah,
that's it. It's Wicket, yeah. Right? Yeah.
I was trying to come up with a Willow pun, and I couldn't.
And so he's always great. I haven't watched the Willow series yet, but I've heard it's really good. But looking at the actual character of the Leprechaun, man, I think that first and foremost, you've got to acknowledge the fact that he's just so recognizable. Mm-hmm. This is a character. He's up there as one like Ghostface. People who have never seen a Scream movie know who Ghostface is. They know he's a killer, right? So in recognizability, he's up there with all of them. You've never seen a Friday the 13th, but you know that if I put on a hockey mask, I look like Jason. He's got that. And part of that is because the special effects and that makeup were just gruesome and stuck with you. In the pantheon of killers, it's interesting, right? Because it's always fun to look at these slasher films and try to come from the perspective of the slasher and why they're doing these things. You've got guys like Freddy, who as a person was awful. Then he was murdered and he wants revenge. Okay, well, yeah, but your murder was kind of their revenge, so it could have ended there.
Right.
You've got Jason, and that's a whole back and forth thing. He was killed or he died. His mom was killed. But when you look at the Leprechaun, for all we know, before this dude's gold was stolen, he wasn't doing anything except for minding his own goddamn business.
Right.
Like we have absolutely, only looking at this movie. Yes, there's a Leprechaun origins and all of that, but only looking at this movie, for all we know, if you are a leprechaun watching this movie, this is your death wish, right?
Yeah.
It's
exactly what it is.
You're watching this guy. You're like, well, of course he went and killed them all. They robbed him of everything he had. And so there's a really interesting motivation here in whether or not the leprechaun was just a good dude before his life savings was stolen from him by some drunk guy on a business trip to Ireland. Right. So I think that lends a certain amount of credence to what he's doing and raises him up above some of these others where your motivations get kind of dumb. Like I said, like if you're comparing him to Ghostface and Scream 2, that one just falls apart by the end, right? The motivation there's just man. But yeah. If all I had in the world was stolen by one guy in a bag, I would want to find that guy and I would want to get it back. And then if I spent 10 years in a crate waiting to get it back, I would probably be pretty salty about still not having it back. And so motivation wise, I think it's great. I think that the look is something that has absolutely stood the test of time. I mean, the Leprechaun origin film was in 2018. I mean, we're still making it. Yeah. They're still using the same look. And so I think that when you start to get into those B tier slasher guys, that he has firm footing with a Chucky. As somebody who maybe your movies aren't that great, but you're recognizable for a mile.
Shit, man, I gotta agree. Is he the pinnacle of slasher killers? No. Are there worse? Yeah. And he sits in a place where everyone from my grandmother to my 8-year-old knows who he is.
Right.
Because even though Link had never seen the movie before, when he heard that we were doing Leprechaun, he was like, "Oh, you're going to do Leprechaun."
Yeah.
Like he knew him, and he didn't know the name Warwick Davis. But when I told him that he was Wicket, when I told him that he was Willow, he was like, "Oh, okay." So this is an actor that I have to kind of give some reverence to. He's been there for years, for like 40 years. This guy's been working and kicking ass, and he did every single one of these except for the last one.
Yep.
This is a character that he really loved. And when you hear him speak about the Leprechaun, like, he really loved making these movies. He didn't like getting in the makeup, but he loved making these movies.
Oh yeah, I saw a thing on the wiki today about how freakishly long. I think it was like a 5-hour thing for him to get the makeup on,
and like an hour to get it off. So it's not like you can just rip this stuff off, because they only make a certain number of these prosthetics. So to me, he really infused some life into this character, where it was a character that I not only occasionally sympathized with, because as a let's call myself as a non-capitalist, I saw.
I thought you were going to say you sympathized because I thought it was going to be a height joke.
Oh, well, there's that too.
I thought you were going to be like, yeah, there we go. Yeah,
these are my people, right? So as a non-capitalist, to see someone like Daniel O'Grady come in and steal from him and be like, what's mine, because capitalism and entrepreneurship and all that, right? Like, I was upset. I was like, what the fuck, man? You're going into, granted, he's Irish too, but you're going and stealing from the indigenous folk.
Right.
And you're lauding yourself, and then looking at him like, but why did you follow me back here? I followed the rules. Whose fucking rules, man?
Yeah, exactly. I can only imagine that leprechauns themselves did not make the rules that said that if you
No.
catch one, you get to keep their shit.
Right. And in fact, he says it. He goes, "I caught a leprechaun and I forced him to tell me where it is." I'm like, so like you're admitting to like, dude, this is not cool, right? Like all he wants is what is rightfully his back. That's all he wants. And so, like, he is occasionally sympathetic, right? And he is often funny.
Yes.
I love this guy.
Yeah, man.
He's very easy to fall in love with as a villain, as a character, as someone who I want to see more of. It's I don't know how many of these movies I've seen. I'm pretty sure I've seen the second one. I don't know how many more of these I've seen.
I have only seen this one and Leprechaun in the Hood, just because when I found out that existed, I was like, I need to watch
Maybe
this.
that's the one I saw. And I may not have even seen that one. I think it was Back to the Hood. But like I kind of feel like I need to keep going.
I kind of do too.
And I don't know if I'm just a glutton for punishment, because this was not a good movie. But fuck if I didn't enjoy it, man. And I watched it dead sober. All right. And if sober, I can find this funny. Shit, I can't imagine what I'd be like with, a couple of glasses of Jameson or Cutty Sark,
right,
or some classic, Irish whiskey in me.
Yeah, this is one where it does come down to being able to enjoy the killer. Mm-hmm. We talked about that when we did. I feel like it's funny because I feel like one episode, and I don't know if you've run into this, one episode that I've gotten a lot of flack from friends that listen is our review of the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because we really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
People. That one didn't sit well with people, right? It's like people did not like how much we liked the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre and how little we liked Barbarian. But I digress.
Ask me if I fucking care, though.
but you've got to find something to latch onto. And with that one, we latched on to how great the kills were. And in this one, you latch on to how good the Leprechaun is as a character. Because you're right. People I know that I tell about this podcast that are like, oh, I don't watch horror movies. But then, they'll be like, oh, St. Patrick's Day is coming up. Are you doing Leprechaun? People who have never seen it. People who have no idea what it's about, but they know that there is a movie out there called Leprechaun, and they know what that face looks like. And it's just ingrained into everybody, because you're right. They used to plaster the horror section of Blockbuster with these things, because again, the look, man, it's gruesome. If you're watching us live, you got just a little bit of his face poking through there in the middle.
Yep.
And it's just, but it was such a good look. And it was also, again, kind of subverting expectations. They could have just given him rags and made him look gross, but the outfit is exactly what they're wearing in all those children's books I read.
Yeah.
But the face is a monster. And it's that, again, that perfect blend of all of those things that just stacks up to be an iconic character. And I think that we both got it. I mean, he's A tier if we're calling the Holy Trinity S tier, right? Like he's only one step down from those guys in recognizability and just being ingrained into the collective unconscious.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't disagree with that, with the A tier versus S tier thing. I do want to call myself out.
Okay.
I called Cutty Sark an Irish whiskey. And after I said that, I was like, is it Irish? And I just looked it up, and I was fucking wrong. Really wrong. Okay. So to all of my Irish brethren, my apologies. To my Scottish friends, Cutty Sark does it, so it'll do. It's not Glenlivet, but it'll do.
And so, I mean, that's I mean, we've nailed it, right?
Yeah.
We've got episodes we go for 90 minutes, we got episodes we go for an hour, but this is one where we've discussed it, and all we've got left is to rate this thing.
Yeah.
And so we kicked around a couple of different things, but I think that one of the funniest things in this movie is when we see the leprechaun eating what is obviously Lucky Charms, but the box very clearly says that they're Lucky Clovers. And that is not quite Lucky the Leprechaun on the box.
Nope.
Not quite. But they're obviously Lucky Charms.
Mm-hmm.
So, in case you have forgotten, we do always rate a movie against itself only and solely. We are just looking at Leprechaun. We're not talking about the whole franchise. We're not comparing it to any other film that we could have done for this time of year. So, we create a unique rating system. And because that box made me laugh so hard, out of a possible 5 boxes of Lucky Clovers, Dave, what do you give Leprechaun?
You know, I was going back and forth on this, and I don't feel comfortable going as low as 3.5. And I don't know how I feel about 4. And I feel like somewhere right in between there, like a 3 3/4 box of Lucky Clover would be perfect, but we don't do that here.
Right.
So I am going to round up and go to 4. And there's one reason why I'm coming up from 3.5 boxes of Lucky Clover, and it's rewatchability. This is a movie that I can rewatch year after year after year. And I realize that I said at the top of the show that I haven't seen this since the, mid to late 90s. Forget that. Because after watching this movie twice in one week,
24 hours.
All right. Yeah, twice within 24 hours. I can already see myself watching this on Friday when I get back from having way too much green beer. All right. I already know how my Friday's going to go, and it's going to end with me passed out on the couch wearing a green shirt and a cardboard green top hat that someone smashed down on my head because I didn't fucking buy it. Right. And I'm going to be on that couch with a bottle of Jameson, and I'm going to be singing, Danny Boy, watching this movie.
There are far worse ways to spend a Friday night.
Fuck, that's how I want to spend tonight.
I'm stuck in that same no man's land because I definitely don't want to go 3.5. And so I've been trying to figure out which way I was going to go with it. But you're right. And because I said the same thing, I haven't watched this in so long. But yeah, I'm ready to do it again. Hell, I'm ready to keep watching more of them and just see if I can keep laughing. And so I'm gonna go up to that 4 boxes of Lucky Clovers because I had so much fun watching this. And I didn't start it until late last night.
Mm-hmm.
Between time change and spring break, time is meaningless right now.
It's a construct anyway.
Yeah, I burned all my clocks Saturday night. Don't tell me to ever fall back again. And so I feel really comfortable here giving this 4 because I do. I've got a thing I'm going to Saturday night, and if the kids fall asleep and they're like, "Hey, let's you want to watch a scary movie?" Like, "Oh my, we should watch Leprechaun." Like, I can already see throwing that out there Saturday night if we're looking for something to do, because it's just anybody who occasionally enjoys a scary movie or occasionally enjoys a good laugh with some blood is going to be able to enjoy this. There's good performances. There's some good gore. There's some good laughs. There's a lot to write home about this. And I'm sure it is going to be a steep decline as we finish recording tonight. and I have a beer or two and I watch number 2. But I'm interested in seeing more of this. And that's something that I can't always say about a movie. So yeah, I'm comfortable at 4 boxes of Lucky Clovers.
So there you go. It is a solid 4 boxes of Lucky Clover cereal for 1993's Leprechaun, starring Warwick Davis and Jennifer Aniston, directed by the great Mark Jones. So to all of our Irish fans and fans of Irish descent, happy St. Patrick's Day. There's some sort of Gaelic saying that I don't think I can pull off. Neither should I.
Yeah.
And so I will simply say happy St. Patrick's Day. Well, we'll leave it at that.
That works. That works.
Yeah.
And so if you're listening, if you're watching and you've enjoyed us, make sure you head to shiverpod.com where you will find links to all of our social media. We are on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Oh, and Instagram at ShiverPod. You can find us in all 4 of those places there. The one handle will find all of them for you. But like I said, shiverpod.com's got links to them all. We record every Wednesday live at 9, 8 Central. So you can always join in. Seth, we appreciate you chiming in today. Anybody who watches us live, always feel free to chime in. Let us know what you think. So we've been going back, but we are going to catch up on some of the modern stuff. We do get questions about whether or not we're doing some of the newer stuff, and we are coming with 2 movies that are just releases in the past couple months that we have heard some good buzz about, that people have been wondering if we're going to do it. So make sure you tune in next week when we will be reviewing Smile, which Dave just caught the other night because he forgot we were doing Leprechaun this week.
It's kind of a thing with me.
And I have not watched Smile yet. We're going to do Smile, and then we've got Megan. So we are coming with brand new stuff for the next couple of weeks. So make sure you tune in and watch it. Watch us there. Interact with us on Instagram. Let us know what you think. If you love the show, if you love horror movies and you want an opportunity to be on, don't be afraid to speak up and let us know. We got plenty of room down here for a third window, and we'd love to probably have you on as long as you've got a microphone. So we appreciate each and every one of y'all for listening. Thank you so much for all the support. Instagram is our main spot, but we've been hearing from people from a lot of different places.
Yeah. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, write you very much.